Today we're looking at business process management and the automation revolution that's currently taking place. I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I have a special guest, Mike Piech, VP and General Manager of Middleware at Red Hat. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So, not a lot of people would use the word exciting when talking about BPM necessarily, but it actually is a pretty exciting time with regard to some of the macro trends that are really pushing BPM in a way that's quite revolutionary. Can you talk a little bit about some of those things that are taking place?
Sure. I think fundamentally in enterprise software development these days, you've got this kind of perfect storm of cloud, containers, DevOps, and microservices, all coming together to enable kind of a much sort of faster paced rate of trial and error style adaptation and evolution of applications. And I think that general approach, that general capability is kind of cultivating a sort of a style of application development and overall solution development that needs a lot more flexibility, needs to be able to manipulate things at a much finer granularity. In other words, with less in the way of large-scale pre-packaged solutions kind of already in place and kind of accepted as they are. And trying to state it even more succinctly, folks want to just get in and manipulate small pieces rapidly and then roll those changes out and see the effects and then iterate.
Well, and it seems like we're at a tipping point right now, right? We have so much data available that we can process and analyze, and so much speed with which that can be communicated between applications, microservices, and what you really need now is an automated way to make those decisions. I mean, the human is starting to become overburdened.
Right. Absolutely. So there's, complementing the whole notion I was just talking about in terms of, manipulating the processing pieces with fine granularity. You're also having to deal with, what the industry's been calling big data for a few years, right? It's just lots of data, lots of different kinds of data, data that changes really fast. And in order to really effectively set up and evolve workflows to best take advantage of all of that data, you need a lot more automation, right? And we're really getting to the point where not just sort of setting up automation initially, but involving actual learning where the automation itself improves over time.
Well, and that's what's exciting. It's not only big data, it's AI, it's all the other kind of confluence. 5G is going to be happening, and that's going to have a big impact. It's this confluence of these small little revolutions coming together to really have a large impact on the enterprise.
Yeah, and another aspect of this, which is really, I think, exciting to just come back to the word that you opened with, is the enabling of many more participants in a business, in an enterprise, to be involved in this rapid trial and error style of innovation and business adaptation. So it's no longer this, as they talk about in application development, it's no more the waterfall process, it's much more agile, but agile not just among the developers, among the business users and the other stakeholders as well, right? So it's not as if the line of business folks hand a big stack of requirements to IT and they go off and build some applications and come back, weeks, months, years later and say, okay, here's our our solution, our sort of manifestation of your requirements as software. It's the business guy and the developer side by side working through, hey, business wants to do this. Hey, we can implement this. Well, I didn't really realize we could do that. Maybe we try this. And that sort of rapid, incremental, fast-paced type of collaborative development is super exciting, and I think in the process automation space is an area within enterprise software where that really I think is becoming manifest and apparent.
Well, and that's another part of it, right? The kind of liberation of these technologies to the business user, right? We've seen it in BI and data integration with self-service tools that are now readily available. We've seen it in app development with low-code, no-code app development platforms. I mean, that's happening right now with business automation as well.
Exactly. I think, business process management, the traditional BPM category and set of solutions, probably did break, some of the original ground, or some of the earliest ground anyway, in terms of setting up seats where non-developer business analysts, other stakeholder types of users could actually manipulate, what the software was doing. I think that evolution has continued to enable a wider range of stakeholders to be able to do a wider range of things. So it really just has expanded, democratized, if you will, that sort of the creation of differentiated business logic.
So how are you seeing companies come to this and really try to take that next step and not necessarily just buy, the large packaged, pan-galactic solution, but really who's in the room with you, who's really thinking about this, and who's kind of part of that team internally to an enterprise as they come to the decision?
I think there are a variety of paths, a variety of entry points to the latest and greatest of process automation technologies. Certainly, just speaking from the perspective of some of our own customers, there are shops where they've maybe used one of the traditional BPM solutions and want to complement those with some maybe lighter weight, faster to get started, more flexible types of technologies that take advantage of cloud native approaches, right? Microservices and containers and technologies like that. I think in other examples, there are shops that maybe never even had a traditional BPM solution. They're building some custom applications and services using some other enterprise middleware, right? So integration technologies, application servers, microservice runtimes, etc. And they're realizing that they want to enable more than just those rocket science Java developers to be able to manipulate things. So okay, how can we easily enable again, other business stakeholders to participate? Oh, hey, Red Hat has some technologies in that area complementing the others in the portfolio, and hey, here's a fairly straightforward way to augment some of the middleware technologies that we're already using to enable workflows and abstractions such as tasks and sign-offs and approvals and those sorts of things, and set up all of those kinds of seats where business analysts and other, again, non-technical types of users can manipulate again and experiment and innovate.
So who's pushing the envelope? I mean, with regard to vertical or lines of business, I mean, where are we seeing the envelope being pushed?
Sure. Certainly financial services. I mean, some of our largest and sort of most enthusiastic kind of adopters and embracers of this technology are on Wall Street or London City, the financial centers around the world, Hong Kong.
And what are they? Is there similar trend lines there in terms of what they're looking to solve? Is it transactional?
Yeah, they're certainly using these workflow types of technologies to. Everything's about competing and differentiating, right, and outpacing your competitors, right? And so as a financial services institution, you're wanting to be able to roll out financial products more quickly, and so the more that you can enable, the financial product managers and their business teams to directly innovate. To create products, to manipulate products without having to go talk to a Java developer or otherwise the IT shop to get changes rolled out for them, the faster they can innovate. So setting up, again, workflows, sign-offs, being able to not only be able to set up and manipulate those workflows, but to, in a very sort of quantitative way, observe the effects of changes and use that to that feedback loop to iterate rapidly to the point where you've optimized a workflow or the product itself is super important.
So any unusual implementations you guys are coming across that where you say, wow, I didn't see that one coming?
Unusual implementation. That's a great question. I'd say in the financial services arena, since we're kind of in that area for the moment, they're at a macro level, they're all rolling out new products. They're concerned about fraud detection. They're obviously concerned more generally about security. They're always trying to do lots of integration. So at a top level, they're all doing that. But then once you drill a level or two down, the ways in which they're using different kinds of technologies, let's say a combination of a rules engine and an in-memory data grid to rapidly analyze huge swaths of data in real time to detect patterns that indicate fraudulent behavior, right? That was an interesting example the first time we saw it appear, and as we talk about it and help sort of catalyze that type of thinking in some of our other customers and so on, you see approaches like that spread. So I guess in a way, things when they first come out are often unique and innovative, but they don't stay that way for long, because as soon as it's understood by others that it's an interesting approach, it's a fairly efficient market of information, and the approach spreads fairly rapidly. So,
right.
And of course, there's not just financial services. We see lots of uptake of process automation, workflow automation technologies in government, right, public sector. So, you can just imagine the myriad ways in which a national or state or local government needs to simplify paper trails, right? Simplify paperwork in general. Process automation has been a massive contributor in how what used to be laborious, time-consuming, and resource-consuming processes have been simplified. I recently applied for a mortgage loan for the first time in a number of years, and I was astounded at how much of what was in the past an incredibly laborious kind of sequence of paperwork steps has been collapsed into a couple of online steps. So that innovation, again, back to the word exciting, right? It's just really interesting as a consumer of that technology to see it in action.
So where do you think the BPM space is headed? I mean, are we looking at a consolidation? Are we looking at a fragmentation? I mean, how do you see what you guys are doing with regard to some of your more innovative new solutions versus some of the big kind of monolithic solutions out there? I mean, do you see yourselves competing? I mean, where do you see the space heading?
So couple of perspectives on that. I think there probably is something of a fragmentation, certainly a morphing, and in many ways a morphing into more different pieces of what might have been traditionally called the BPM space, right? Just like other parts of enterprise software, and particularly application development categories like within middleware, right? So for example, the application server, right? For well over a decade, arguably up to 2 decades, there's this notion of an application server that was a well understood box that did a well understood set of things, and certainly incremental improvements were made, but that category was fairly stable. And now with the cloud and microservices and the notion of cloud native containers, the notion of an app server has been fragmented. I think a similar phenomenon is likely to happen with, again, the traditional category of BPM, solutions. And then in addition to that, and whether it fragments as much as, let's say, the application server runtime layer of the stack did or not, an area that is absolutely going to change the game in a big way is the application of learning, of machine learning. As the traditional notion of process automation, the automation was kind of thought through up front by a human and encoded into software, right? So the design of the automation happened up front. I think the exciting future is where the designer puts in place some general parameters, but basically sets in motion a learning process where the automation itself improves over time based on learning. We're already looking at how to apply technologies like Apache Spark and some of the machine learning libraries above that for various types of learning algorithms and incorporating that into our process automation capabilities to enable our customers to easily and efficiently and in a safe way be able to use that kind of learning to sort of augment and make much more sophisticated their process automations. So yeah, I'd put that out there as one of the most exciting areas of innovation in this space.
Well, Mike, this has been great. Thanks very much for coming in, sharing your thoughts on this subject. We would certainly encourage you to go to Solutions Review and check out our BPM site and all that we're writing about, as well as checking out the Red Hat solutions with regard to process automation. They have done some really interesting things, and I think some more interesting things are about to be announced. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Doug.